Hey everybody, Tekking101 here, and today's video is going to be about Yoruichi Shihōin Zanpakuto. I get so much mail about this. It is insane, or at least I did, you know, back when I was relevant. Anyway, 4 major topics in this video. I'll just go over all of them really quickly. There are 4 questions, basically, that come up about Yoruichi Zanpakuto. So if you got a place to be in a hurry, I'll just give you the quickie answers here. Does Yoruichi Shihōin have a Zanpakuto? Yes, she does. Have we seen it? Yes, we have, in a flashback. Has she used it in the actual canon of the story? No. And does she have a Bankai? Yes. I will expand on each one of these points in this video, as well as going into a little bit more detail about other characters in the series that we know for a fact have their Zanpakuto. They just choose not to use it for whatever reason. So, first, very simple is, does Yoruichi even have a Zanpakuto? Now, to most people out there, this might just be a simple answer of, like, of course she does, but I just want to clear it up really, quick, because I get a lot of comments, especially back during the fight with Askin, when Yoruichi and Yushiro were fighting against Askin Naklevar. I got a lot of comments that were quite simply just, does Yoruichi even have a Zanpakuto? So, yes, she does. She has a Zanpakuto, and we have seen it before, at least in its Asauchi form. I'll get into that in a second, but I want to just stress how much of a critical item the Zanpakuto is to the Gotei 13, with very, 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 very few exceptions. In fact, only like maybe 1 or 2 exceptions in my book. You have a character that becomes a high-ranking member of the Gotei 13 without having a functional Zanpakuto. Alright? You have to understand that this is not just a tool to use. This is not just like, this isn't even just like another sentient spirit that becomes like a friend or a comrade to the Shinigami that it's bound to. This is something much more than that. It is basically an extension of their own soul, as we found out in this final arc. The blade is me. Do not think of the Zanpakuto spirit as like this other sentient creature that just pals around with you. It is part of your soul that just kind of splits off and, inhabits the sword. Now, how you get a Zanpakuto is all hinged around the Asauchi, or the shallow hits. This was the big invention that Nimaya created. In fact, just a testament to see how important the Zanpakuto is to the Soul Society, the person that created them was immediately given a spot in the highest, in the Zero Squad, in the Royal Guard. That's how much of a big deal this shit is. So, an Asauchi, usually the traditional way of getting an Asauchi is they just hand them out in the academy. They pass, like, basically a blank slate Zanpakuto to everybody, and, you train with your Asauchi, you sleep with your Asauchi, you pour your Reiatsu into it, and then over time, that Asauchi will become your Zanpakuto. Now, that's the traditional way you get it, going through the motions of, like, the academy to become an official member of the Gotei, but that's not how everybody gets it. Kenpachi Zaraki, for instance, he just presumably just pulled his Asauchi off of a corpse. Maybe it was a corpse of a low-level Shinigami. Maybe he didn't have his Asauchi for very long, or maybe after you die, your Zanpakuto maybe regresses back into an Asauchi. I actually have another theory regarding that with Tozen, because Tozen, Suzumushi, he didn't get that from, like, he didn't get an Asauchi first. He picked that off the corpse of, like, his dead friend, and yet he was still able to use its abilities. So maybe after the Shinigami dies, the sword doesn't, like, just disappear or whatever. It just reverts back to Asauchi stage. Anyway, getting off topic, Kenpachi just picked up the Asauchi off a corpse, and that's how he got his Zanpakuto. So, Zanpakuto is very critical, and the only exception to this, the only exception that I can think of a Shinigami that could not turn an Asauchi into a Zanpakuto and became a high-ranking member of the Gotei 13 without said Zanpakuto was Nanao Issei. And the reason for that is because her family has, like, this ancestral Zanpakuto that is, like, passed down through the women of the Issei clan, and I'm not even gonna begin to fucking think about how the rules with that fucking work. Like, I could be here for, that's a whole other topic for a whole other video. But, she even in Nanao's case, she still technically does have a Zanpakuto. It's just not gained through, it's just like an ancestral sword that's passed down and operates on, like, a different, like, rule system. But she is the only exception I can think of a Shinigami that could not turn an Asauchi into a Zanpakuto. Even Ichigo Ichigo that had a Zanpakuto for the majority of the series didn't have an Asauchi, he still had to use an Asauchi in the final arc to get a proper working Zanpakuto. Because you saw all the... I mean, Ichigo's the exception to pretty much every rule, but yeah, that's basically what I'm getting across here is, yes, Yoruichi absolutely does have a Zanpakuto, because every other pretty much Shinigami in history was given one, with just a very few exceptions to this rule. Alright, so to clear up anybody that was confused about that system, there you go. So the next question is, have we ever seen her Zanpakuto in the series before? Yes, we have, in a flashback, when Yoruichi was explaining the past of Uehara to Ichigo when they were in that underground, like, hot spring area after Ichigo was recovering from his fight with Kenpachi. You know, Ichigo gets curious about his master, the person that taught him, and he's like, oh, Yoruichi, I want to know about the guy that trained me. And Yoruichi goes on to explain, like, okay, he was the former captain of Squad 12, he created the research and development, and we were childhood friends. We grew up together, we trained together in this place, and you see a flashback scene of Uehara and Yoruichi, much younger, and what do you see on Yoruichi's hip there? You see Zanpakuto. Or, in my opinion, considering this was their training days, and considering we do not see Yoruichi use her Zanpakuto at all during the canon of the story, I'm gonna bet dollars to donuts that that was merely the Asauchi that she was training with. They get your Asauchi and they tell you, pretty much spend your entire, like, morning, noon, and night around your Asauchi, and just, like, so it can, bond with you, and you pour your Reiatsu into it. So that was during her training days, so it would make sense why she would have one. That is the only time in the story that we actually ever see her with a sword, like, on her hip, or with her. That's the only time we see that there. Right. So, next question is, has she used it? No, she has not. But a lot of people like to think that she has. A lot of people like to try to fit Yoruichi Zanpakuto into her repertoire of attacks. Look, Yoruichi Shihōin, little fun fact about her, I don't know if you knew this or not, but she is a fucking ninja. She isn't just a ninja, no, she is a ninja goddess. Ninja bow to a giant painting of her, light incense, and then pray to her that they might even be a modicum as much of a ninja as she is. And then they jack off to the picture. I'm sorry, she has a really great banging ass. Anyway, so she has a lot of shit in her repertoire, okay? She has a lot of she has like hammer space where she just pulls out a bunch of crap. Like just in this last arc alone, she had razor wire, she had a grappling hook, she had these disintegrating spheres, she had these sealing talismans that she used to try to patch up the Soul King. Beyond the final arc, in like the Soul Society arc, she had this like trinket that allowed people to fly. She had a tentoken that allowed people to fly. She had these little daggers that she concealed in her ankles that she could like flick at someone. She could like make a kicking motion, and that sends out these blades called Onken, which are just dark blades. And no, these are not her Zanpakuto. Just because it has a blade, it doesn't mean it's a Zanpakuto, guys. And yes, I have had people say to me, "Didn't she use her Zanpakuto in the fight with Soifone? You see her use that blade." I'm like, no, it's just a dagger. It's just a dagger. So she has a lot of shit on her, but none of that stuff I don't see connecting to her Zanpakuto. Oh, but you say, Tekking, what about in her final fight with Askin, where you had the scene with Uehara, and then he peels off the piece of paper, and she becomes a Thundercat? A lot of people have been saying this is her Zanpakuto ability. Perhaps her Zanpakuto ability, perhaps, the only way that people are making this, make any sense are by sort of like using like fan fiction logic that has never really been expressed in the series, never really been mentioned at all. You're just kind of like, well, maybe if she maybe she doesn't have her sword with her, but that's because she fused with her sword, and that's why she has all these weird abilities, like she can turn into a cat and into a Thundercat. Maybe that's why. I discredit that theory, simply because that's... Well, first off, like I said, the Zanpakuto is kind of you already. It's so... The whole idea was she, combining with her sword. That's something that's never been mentioned before in the series, and the sword is already you. Kind of hard to become one with you when the sword is already you. you know, like doing some fusion dance shit here. So no, I'm gonna say no. The ability to turn into a cat, the ability for her to go into a Thundercat, I don't think that's any connection to her Zanpakuto at all. Why could she turn into a cat, though? That's such an unusual ability. Well, you know, she is part of a noble clan. Maybe it's something indicative of the Shihōin clan. Or perhaps it has something to do with the beast realm that Sajin and his grandfather were talking about. Animalistic creatures like Komamura, who was a canine, and yet became a captain of the Goatee 13, can walk around and talk, you know? So there are these kind of animals that can do that. So I would rather say she has a connection through it because of the noble clan or because of the beast realm, you know, any day of the week, before I say it has some weird, you know, connection to her Zanpakuto that has never been mentioned, never been hinted at before in the series. As for her Thundercat form, I honestly think that's an experiment on Uehara's end, or something that Uehara did to Yoruichi. Because remember what Yoruichi said when Uehara asked her to go into that form. Yoruichi responded with, "I'm never going into that, like, disgracing, provocative form ever again." You know? Now, a Zanpakuto doesn't always cater to the personality of its owner, right? For example, Soifone. Soifone hates her Bankai because it's not very effective. She's very light, she's very thin, she's a ninja as well, although not as much of a ninja as Yoruichi. Not very good suited to her assassin personality that she has a giant fuck-off missile launcher on her arm, right? So she doesn't like her Bankai very much, just on the way it looks. Same thing with Shuhei. Shuhei doesn't like his sword because it's like, it's meant to reap death, and we've already been on that shit already. I mean, it's meant to reap death. Okay, it's meant to reap life. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I reap the death and I bring you back to life. That would be more probably suited to Shuhei's taste. Maybe that's his Bankai. But, yeah, so having a Bankai that Yoruichi would despise or dislike, and maybe that's the reason she doesn't use it. That's one thing, sure. But then you have Uehara and the way that it's activated. Uehara just, out of nowhere, just pulls out this sheet of paper, and he's just like, hey, when I peel this sticker off, you're gonna go into your crazy Thundercat form. Okay, okay, so from what if you're still want to go with this having some connection to her Zanpakuto, then you're telling me that Uehara can, like, remotely activate someone else's Bankai or Zanpakuto abilities by ripping off a sticker. And a Zanpakuto, by the way, that we've never even seen Yoruichi carry, but she still somehow has. Uehara is capable of a lot of shit, but it's just something that we've never seen happen before in the series. You know, Uehara can, I'm gonna remotely activate your Zanpakuto abilities now by peeling off this sticker. Uehara's good, but he's not that fucking good. I mean, it's never been hinted at or anything, so no. The Thundercat thing, her ability to turn into a cat in general, I'm going to say no, is not a clear, is not convincing to me that that is her Zanpakuto ability, or anything to do with her Zanpakuto, or that her Zanpakuto is even present. So, and if Kubo really wanted that to be the case, I think he would have made that very clearly the case. So that is why I say that she has not used her Zanpakuto in this series. Okay, last question here. Can she use Bankai? Yes, she can. And this comes from Yoruichi's mouth herself when she's explaining Bankai to Ichigo and how to, you know, what it is. It's the second release of the sword. And she's saying that currently in the Goatee 13, the only captain that is currently, you know, active that cannot use Bankai is Kenpachi. Since then, he actually has begun to use it. Kenpachi can use Bankai now. But then, after that, she goes on to say that actually, in the entire history, in the vast history of the Seirete and the Soul Society, which stretches back thousands of years, Kenpachi Zaraki, I believe, is the only exception to someone becoming a captain and not having even learned the name of his sword or a Bankai. Right? Now, Yoruichi, obviously, way more skilled than Kenpachi. Alright? At least in terms of technique. I'm not talking about in terms of raw power. I'm talking about intelligence and in technique. right? So I don't see any explanation why Yoruichi would be like, fuck, I don't want to learn the name of my sword. You know, that doesn't make any sense. All right, so yes, she was the captain of the 2nd Division, so therefore she does have a Bankai. All right, so why doesn't she use it? Why doesn't she carry her Zanpakuto around? Okay, well, I can think of 2 reasons for that. The first reason is simply it's like an issue with Soifone or with Shuhei. She has a Zanpakuto, she knows a Shikai, she knows a Bankai, but it's not very helpful in how she fights. She is an assassin. She's an assassin. She relies on speed, blitzing her opponent, and, you know, all this crazy acrobatic crap in the air and doing all the flips and shit. You know, she's used to that. And Kido. She's a big user of Kido. In fact, that's what Shunko is, combining Hakuda, hand-to-hand combat, like Bruce Lee shit, and then Kido, which is like magic, essentially, the demon arts, you know, like Avada Kedavra Horshoshi! You know, like that crap together. Perhaps her Zanpakuto is not a Kido type. It's not catered to that kind of fighting. And that's what Yoruichi trained in ever since she was a little kid. She was raised in a house that basically set her up to be like an assassin in a sense, or, you know, commanding the stealth corps, right? So probably before she even got an Asauchi, she was training in this shit. And like I said, it's no guarantee your like Soifone's the same way. Soifone was raised her whole life to be an assassin. She gets her Zanpakuto, and the Shikai is pretty useful, but then the Bankai is like something that she can't even use in the way she fights, so she never uses it. Maybe it's something to do with Yoruichi. Maybe Yoruichi's is even worse. Maybe her Shikai and her Bankai are useless to her. You know, or they're not Kido-based, or they just slow her down, or it's just the kind of thing that she can only use in certain circumstances, and she just never had the circumstances to use them. The second explanation is, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe a little bit more similar to the first one, but I was thinking, like, okay, maybe she does have a Zanpakuto, she has the Shikai, well, I know she has a Zanpakuto, she has a Shikai, and she has a Bankai, and maybe it is useful to her, it's just that she feels more comfortable fighting another way. As an example of this, look at, okay, let's use Hawkeye. Let's use Hawkeye from the Marvel comic book series, alright? I'm going off cinematic universe because I don't read comics, so a lot of comic book fans are probably gonna, you know, hold my freaking throat with the knife. It's like, oh, okay, you better shit. I'm regretting this comparison already. But okay, Hawkeye. Primary weapon is a fucking bow and arrow. Admittedly, it's a pretty damn kick-ass bow and arrow. He's got all these different types of arrows that he can launch and shit like that, and I believe the bow itself can even kind of be like a weapon, like it's a reinforced staff or something. But still, going into battle with a bunch of aliens and super soldiers and people that have fucking blasters and ray guns and he's in S.H.I.E.L.D. and of course he got all these stuff. Going into battle with a fucking bow and arrow, that seems really kind of retarded. You know, like, at least give him fucking, like, why doesn't he at least use a fucking gun? Has Hawkeye used a gun? I'm sure he's probably used a gun. I'm sure he's pretty adept at using a gun, you know? But bow and arrow, that's his namesake, that's his primary weapon. And the reason that he does it is not because that he probably wouldn't be good at using other weapons or anything like that. It's just his personal preference. He just likes using a bow and arrow. Okay, that's probably just why he uses it. Just like, oh yeah, I could use a gun. Yeah, I could use this really advanced form of, you know, blaster rifle or something. Yeah, I can maybe use this mech suit. I just like the bow and arrow, though. It's just kind of my personality. Maybe he was raised by a bunch of archers. I don't know the backstory of Hawkeye, but I'm sure a lot of people are probably going to let me know on that one. But yeah, maybe it's something like that. Like, yeah, she has a sword, she has her Bankai Shikai. It's just like, you know, I like using Shunko, I like hand-to-hand combat shit, and the Zanpakuto falls by the wayside, you know? Kind of sucks to be your Zanpakuto, but that's probably the reason. That's the best explanation I can give why she never uses it, you know? And people were saying in that fight with Askin, where she's getting her ass beat before Uehara shows up, it was like, oh man, she's getting her ass kicked. Why doesn't she use her Zanpakuto? And I'm thinking, look, if she's never seen using her Zanpakuto in canon of the story, she's probably any technique that she can use with that is probably going to be way inferior to her using what she is practicing constantly, which is her Shunko. So if she's not using her Zanpakuto, if she's not used to it, then it's probably not going to be much use in a fight where even Shunko wasn't working against Askin, you know? Even if it is some really compacted, like, sword, like it's a dagger that she conceals, like, she has, like, everything in her body at some point. I don't know if she just hides it in her tits or what, but, you know, she pulls all this crazy shit out of nowhere. Even if she did have her Zanpakuto on her person at all times, I could buy that, but she never actually uses its abilities, so she's probably not as skilled at that as she is using, like, Raijin Senkei or something. So as we end this out, let me just talk very quickly, because I know this video is getting on the long side. I ended up going over my limit, honestly. I wanted to get this done quicker, but, you know, I like to ramble, and I did have a lot of stuff to say about this. This was a topic that's a little bit overdue. Some other characters in the series that have a Zanpakuto that we have seen, actually, and just never use it. My favorite example for this is Mashiro Kuna, the super vice captain of the 9th Division. I love Mashiro. I love her personality. I love her design, doing the Kamen Rider thing. I love her techniques. I love the way her back and forth with Kensei. I really wish she had more of a prominence in the final arc. She showed up like one time and never fought against any Quincy's. Didn't even really appear in the battles at all. That kind of sucked. But she does have a Zanpakuto, and it's funny because there's that scene where the Vizards are arriving at Fate Karakura Town ready to fight, and they're all ready to, and they pull out all their swords at the same time. And then you see Mashiro with her sword right there. And it's kind of a cool design. It's got like a square guard with like little circles on the corners. And in the very next chapter, when they're going to fight the Gillions, you see this one panel, it's very small, where she just lets go of her fucking Zanpakuto and allows it to fall to the fucking ground. And then she engages the Gillions in hand-to-hand combat. Mashiro punch! You know, that's the kind of shit she does. That's what she prefers. She's more adept at Hakuda and hand-to-hand combat, utilizing her Holomask's enhanced durability and enhanced strength. She's just, you know, like, I could use my sword, but I'm a lot better at using these. It kind of still questions me why she bothered to pull it out, but hey, she probably just wanted to look cool, like, oh, everybody else is pulling out their swords and looking cool, okay. Fuck it. You know? Another Vizard we have is Hachigen, who also did the thing where he's like, alright, I'm pulling out my sword now. And it was really cool because he drawed his sword with Kido. So that makes me think, like, awesome. Does Hachi have, like, pocket dimensions that he has, like, he keeps all his stuff in? That would be pretty cool because he like, just draws his sword with Kido. So either his sword is like in a separate pocket universe that he can summon with Kido, or maybe his sword, like, he has like some sort of regression spell where he can like shrink objects at will, so he keeps like a little tiny Zanpakuto katana like on a keychain or some shit, and he uses Kido to enlarge it. Either way, it's pretty cool. Same thing with Mashiro though, except in Hachigen's case, we don't even see him drop it. He draws his sword, and then the next time we see him, he's engaging in combat with the Gillions, and he's just using his, you know, snap, 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 a tap, a tap, a tap, you're dead, 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 fuck you. You know, that's how he did that attack. Yeah, so this is other examples of characters that don't use their Zanpakutos. We know they have them, it's just not their prime method for attacking. Remember, Shinigami have 4 basic combat types: Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Ho, and Kido. So, you know, if it's like, well, I'm more of a Ho, I'm just gonna dump all my EXP in fucking Kido. Alright, not really going to focus on hand-to-hand or Zanjutsu too much. And like Rukia. Rukia, for a long time, that's how she did it. Then you have other characters like Momo. Momo is a Kido expert, but her Zanpakuto is also, thankfully, a Kido type. So it can kind of extend like that. Perhaps Yoruichi is a Kido, you know, she's Kido and Hakuda and Ho-Ho all the way. Like, she's advancing in those 3 aspects. Maybe that's why Kubo maybe did it. Makes me think, because it's just like, alright, obviously Yoruichi's Ho-Ho and Hakuda and Kido are maxed out, because she's wicked fast, and she's wicked good at hand-to-hand combat, and she, you know, combined Kido and Hakuda together to make Shunko. She can inject lightning, she can make lightning her freaking do her bidding, so she's maxed out in Kido too. So it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, and now you have the freaking Zanjutsu, which is left by the wayside, something like that. Well, what do you guys think about Yoruichi Zanpakuto? Do you think she's used it at some point? Do you think she merged with it, or do you think it has something to do with her cat form? Like I said, I don't really go along with those kind of theories, but if you have an interesting, new spin on it, I'll be happy to look at it and maybe change my opinion. But I just like to simply think that she just never has it, because that's just not how she fights. It's no mystery. It's no deep wonder of what it... I mean, I am curious as what it is, but... or maybe Kubo just never came up with a design for it. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Love you all. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Later, guys.